Hello all and welcome to TVM Academy. This is CAT VARC 100 series, our free course for CAT verbal preparation. If you have not signed up for this course yet, please do so on our website. The link to our portal is available in the description of this video. Thank you. So this is RC number 10. The link was shared on our Telegram group and it was also sent to your registered email IDs. Let's begin. In the first paragraph of this passage, author tells you that the EW University launched a women's studies program, which was broadly underestimated by supporters and critics alike, but it has inspired scholars to critically analyze the Western feminist theories. The result of such analysis is presented to us in second and third paragraphs. In the second paragraph, author tells you that Korean critics find that the Freudian theory does not apply to Korean society because Korean society is cooperative in nature rather than competitive. So the Freudian theory is applicable only to the Western societies. It is culture bound, it is culture specific. In the third paragraph, the same idea is elaborated further. The differences between Korean society and Western societies are brought out. So dependency in Korean society is not a sign of weakness or failure, unlike that in the Western societies. So basically, if you look at the thought flow of this passage, author introduces a women's studies program launched by a university and how it has inspired scholars to critically examine the Western feminist ideas, feminist theories. The result of such analysis is presented in the remaining passage. Okay. With this understanding, we can now look at the questions quickly. Which of the following is not necessarily true of the family structures in Western and Korean cultures? Okay. Option A, the former Western culture is based on the ideal of competition. The Western family is based on the ideal of competition among the members, while the Korean society is based on the ideal of cooperation. Clearly mentioned in the second paragraph. Here. So option A is mentioned, not the correct answer. Because the question says which of the following is not necessarily true. Option B, a family member in the West would generally find himself torn between shouldering the responsibilities of being a father and a son at once. Okay. Now, please note it was mentioned here in the last paragraph. In Korea, 4 generations may live in the same house, which means that people can be sons and daughters all their lives. Whereas in the Western culture, the roles of husband and son, wife and daughter are often incompatible. Now, this is just illustrative. What the author wants to tell us broadly is that 2 roles may conflict in Western culture. If you are living in a family and you are a son and a father at the same time, a son and a husband at the same time, your roles may conflict. So, however, in the Korean culture, in the Korean society, that does not happen. You can discharge multiple responsibilities at the same time. So option B is also correct. The only problem that I might have in B is that the passage does not really talk about the role of a father and a son being incompatible. It's the role of husband and son being incompatible. So maybe I have a question mark here, but please also note that 4 generations may live in the same house and there's no problem. So when this contrast is brought out, in Korea, 4 generations may live together without a problem, but in West, it becomes a problem. So maybe by implication, by inference, we can still say that the roles of father and a son, the same person finds it difficult to discharge the responsibilities of a father and a son at once. So maybe not. Let's look at other options. Option C, a Western family man is more repressive than a Korean counterpart. Clearly mentioned here. In Korean culture, men cry. And because Korean culture is being contrasted with the Western culture, by implication, it follows that in Western culture, men usually do not cry. So Western family man is more repressive in nature. He represses his emotions than a Korean counterpart does. This is correct. Option C is not the answer. Domestic disharmony is more common in the Western families than in Korean ones. Now, this is a tempting choice. but this is fact, a distorted fact. Passage nowhere talks about domestic disharmony. Disharmony means fights within family members. The passage only says that the Western societies are competitive in nature. So there's a competition between son and father, sibling and sibling. There's competition, but that does not mean there is fight between them or there is domestic disharmony among the family members. So this is tempting, though factually incorrect, distorted. Correct answer, option D. Option B, though not explicitly mentioned, this part of father and son, it will be difficult for the same person to discharge the responsibilities or to shoulder the responsibilities of a father and son. Though it is not directly mentioned, it is implied by the last lines of the passage. Okay. Option 2, which of the following best summarizes the content of the passage? Main idea question. Option A critique of a particular women's studies program. Now, please note, guys, the passage is not a critique of the women's studies program. After introducing this women's study program in the first paragraph, author starts talking about how it has shaped the study of Western feminist theories, how this studies program shaped the study of, or how it inspired scholars to critically examine the Western feminist theories. Therefore, the focal point of the passage is something else. It's too narrow. It covers only the first paragraph. A report of work in social theory done by a particular women's studies program. Exactly. This is the correct answer. Basically, author says that these results have been achieved by the studies program. Their approach has thus far yielded these results, and these are the results. So it's a report of work in social theory done by a particular women's studies program. An assessment of the strengths and weaknesses of a particular studies program. Passage, as discussed, the passage discusses the results of this program rather than the strengths and weaknesses. So, alien idea. Option D, an analysis of the philosophy underlying women's studies program. Again, passage does not discuss the underlying philosophy of this program, but the results obtained through this program. Focus is the results obtained by the study, okay, which was inspired by this program. So this philosophy part is also alien, or maybe just a narrow point of discussion, minor point of discussion, not the main idea of the passage. Question number 3. Which of the following conclusions about the introduction of Western ideas to Korean society can be supported by information in the passage? Okay. Option A, except for technological innovations, few Western ideas have been successfully transplanted into Korean society. First paragraph is our source. It was written that many Western ideas have been successfully transplanted into Asian culture. They have many Western ideas have already proven useful in Asian culture, which means many of them have been. We don't know whether the scope of these ideas is limited to technology. So this part is beyond the scope of discussion. We can't really say option A. It is possible that some social innovations have also been transplanted into Korean society. Some cultural innovations have also been adopted by Korean society or transplanted into Korean society. Those that originated in the West. Okay. Option B, the introduction of Western ideas to Korean society is viewed by some Koreans as a challenge to Korean identity. It was written here. Some people dismiss this program as betrayal of national identity and imitation of Western ideas. So according to these people, yes, introduction of Western ideas into Korean society is a challenge to the national identity or the Korean identity. Option B should be the correct answer. The development of Korean economy depends upon heavily on the development of new academic programs. There's no talk of economy at all. The extent to which Western ideas must be adapted for acceptance by the Korean society is minimal, contradictory to what the passage says. The gist of the passage is that Western and Korean societies are different. Therefore, for a Western idea to be adapted to Korean setting, Korean culture, that kind of changes that you have to make to that program are huge rather than minimal. So contradictory. Can be inferred from the passage that the broadcast media in Korea considered the establishment of women's study program as what? Please note the question is about the broadcast media. First paragraph is the source. In broadcast debates, critics dismiss the program. If critics dismiss the program, it is not the broadcast media that dismiss the program. So basically what the media is doing, what the news channels, for example, are doing, they are holding debates on this program. They are inviting guests, critics, and critics are presenting their viewpoint on this particular program. That does not mean broadcast media has dismissed the program. So their reaction only tells you that they found it newsworthy. That's why they were holding debates in the first place. Also, it was mentioned in the previous sentence that this program received considerable public attention. So basically, the broadcast media was holding debates on this program, inviting guests, inviting critics to express their opinions about the program. As simple as that. Therefore, they considered the program newsworthy rather than imitative or insignificant. These are critics' viewpoints. Critics' viewpoints. Okay. It can be inferred from the passage that the position taken by some of the supporters of the studies program was problematic to the founders of the program because, okay, first paragraph, even supporters underestimated the program, and that is why it was problematic for the founders of the program, because they thought it would merely be another imitation of Western ideas. Okay, so basically these supporters found it imitative, just another imitation of Western. So yes, they supported the program, but they just found it to be a replica of some Western idea, Western program, nothing more than that. So they underestimate. But the founders of the program had problems with this viewpoint as well. So option A, supporters assumed that the program would be based on uncritical adoption of Western theory. Could be the correct answer. The supporters failed to show concern for the issues of national unification, nowhere mentioned. This idea of national identity was given by critics, not the supporters of the program. So we don't know what supporters' stand was on this issue of national unification. The supporters were unfamiliar with Western feminist theory, again alien idea. They accepted the universality of the Freudian theory. Their views about Freud's theory are not mentioned in the passage. Freud's theory is a different point mentioned altogether. And Korean critics have some viewpoint about the Freudian theory. Western feminist critics have a viewpoint about Freudian theory. The supporters of the university's studies program, we don't know about their stand on the Freudian theory at all. So this is also alien. This idea is not attributed to the supporters of the program. Correct answer has to be option A. Sixth, which of the following statements about the Western feminist critique of Freudian theory can be supported by information contained in the passage? Okay, option A. It recognizes that the Freudian theory is contextual. Please note, second paragraph, first line. The Western feminist critique, like the Western feminist critique, the Korean critics find Freudian theory culture bound. So both of them, Western feminist critiques also and the Korean critiques also, both of them find the Freudian theory culture bound. Culture bound means it is contextual in nature. It is not universally applicable. It depends upon the cultural context of the society that you're studying. So yes, this is correct. It was written after 1977. How can we say that? Yeah, it is possible that it can be inferred that the Korean critique was written after 1977 because it was written that their approach, this studies program, which was launched in 1977, this studies program has yielded important critiques of Western theory. But is it the Korean critics or the Western critics? We don't know. And the next line only tells us that like the Western critics, Korean critics have also discussed this theory in a particular way. So we don't know the timeline of this Western feminist critique at all. So we can't say it was written after or before 1977. Data insufficiency. Data insufficiency. So goes out. It acknowledges the universality of the nuclear male-headed family. Quite the opposite. quite the opposite. The Western feminist critique and the Korean critique as well, both of them, they admit that Freudian theory is culture bound. It is not universally applicable, which means they do not accept the universality. They reject the universality of the Freudian theory of nuclear male-headed family, etc. So this is contradictory. It challenges, Western feminist critique challenges Freud's analysis of the role of daughters, too narrow. Too narrow. It challenges the Freud's theory altogether, overall. Does not mean it challenges the analysis of the role of daughters in particular. We don't know that. So too narrow. Correct answer, option A. It was a nice passage, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Keep watching for more. Spread the word about TVM Academy. Like this video, share it with your friends. Thank you very much. Cheers to learn.